What's going on, everybody? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish, and before we get started on this fly, if you could do us a favor and go ahead and hit like and subscribe, and we will get into this. And so today want to tie a little variation on soft hackle fly. Very simple, very time efficient, and very effective in the water. So in the vise, got the Firehole 523. This is a size 10. And for the bead, we've got a Spawn football bead, 6mm, and this is in black. And for some positioning and to make sure that bead doesn't move on us, I'm going to add about 6 wraps of some non-lead .020 weighted wire. And once I've cut that front end, I'll use the inside curve of these scissors and round that cut edge over. And then I'll do the same on the back. And normally I'd use a little bit more wire than this, and I still might reduce this by some here. But what I'm looking for is one to seat this bead, right? And then the reason I don't want exactly that many or too many wraps of wire is we're going to actually tie a wire body. And let's see if we can't remove just a couple wraps here. And it's about 2.5 wraps there. So once you've got that trimmed, just retrim it and push that right up behind there. And that's about as much as we're going to want for a thorax there. So for our thread, I got some uni thread 6/0 black. Let's get that started here behind the weighted wire wraps. Trim out that tag end, and then really make sure we get all these weighted wire wraps solidified. And so we've got some 45-degree angle wraps for a couple passes, and then we'll go ahead with some straight wraps and cinch all those in between the weighted wire wraps, and this thing won't move on us at all. And there we go, nothing to it so far. Alright, so now we're going to tie in some wire, but we're also going to make this a hot wire version, which requires a little bit of flash. So keep in mind that we're tying this on a jig hook, so the flash is going to come over and go in between every other wrap of wire. So for the flash, I've got some Saltwater Flashabou, and this is holographic black. And so what the key here is to make sure it stays on the top portion of that shank, and it's a little tricky once you get back to that hook point, but like anything else, just take your time, be patient, and eventually it'll get where you need it to be. That might be about it. I'm trying to force it back there as far as we can get, and that looks pretty good. Alright, so now we need to tie in some wire, and for the wires today, I'm going to tie them on the opposite side. Since all we're doing is tying them in, I don't want to reduce that hook gap any, and so the easy solution is to tie it on the other side. But as you can see, I've got one black and one red wire, and these are both size medium, and I'm going to put the ends right up against those weighted wires, and that's where I want them to stay, so that the underbody on this fly stays very consistent before we even start. And get it tied all the way back to where that flash is tied in, and then very securely wrap down all the remainder of that wire for our rib, but actually for the body on this. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it one more pass. 1 for strength, and 2 to make sure I've got full coverage. And as even of an underbody as I can get. Alright, now we're back up to behind the bead. So let's start by turning this guy hook point up, bring these wires and kind of push them into a perpendicular with the body, and at this point make one wrap here behind. Actually, the first wraps and our second wrap, and at this point I'm going to pull that flash over and I'm going to trap it on what is the third wrap. Now if there's anything to be careful of here, it's that this wire is going to want to crinkle your flash, so don't be afraid to get your other fingers in there and manipulate it. And let's check our wire. So our wire's touching, but you can see now we've got this little hump of flash, and that's a good thing. So now pull it back and let's make 2 more wraps of the wires, both wires. Once we have 2 more, I'm going to pull this flash over one more time here and trap it down carefully, carefully. Don't crink it but if you can avoid it. And then check your wire wraps. So you can see this is going to prove difficult to keep your wire wraps exactly touching, but like anything else, slow down, take your time, pull that little flash back, and let's make 2 more wraps. Like so, and then on this third one, pull that flash forward and try to cleanly catch it. That one's creeping on me, so just back up that wire wrap and then try to catch it like so. Alright, pull our flash back, and just so you guys can see the progression of this hot wire system, that flash is going to be popping up in the middle of these wraps, and it really sets off a different looking body. And since typically soft hackle type flies are quick and simple, this is one way you can still incorporate a very successful pattern with just a slight variation, so that if everybody else is in the same frame of mind, your fly is still going to stick out a little bit more or look a little bit different to the fish, and sometimes that's all it takes. Alright, so we got pattern going here. Hopefully by now you guys can see that. And then let's move this wire back and take our 2 wraps in front. And at this point, I'll probably just go ahead and finish these off right here. I like that as an ending spot for those wires. And very securely, take your time again, but you want to really secure these wires down. So I've got 3-4 wraps on there, a couple wraps in front of them, and at this point I can simply go in with my wire scissors, trim both of them, and I'm going to use my thumbnail just to push those wires down and continue that rounding of those wires. And at this point too, since I have to tie off this flash, may as well give it one last section there, and voila, let's get rid of that flash. And now look at our regular boring wire body. Not so regular, not so boring. And so you can see as this is moving through the water column, it's going to get this boom 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 as it bounces and moves, and so you'll have bits of flash blinking and driving those poor fish bonkers. Really secure down those threads, keeping in mind the placement of our weighted wire, and that's going to tell us kind of how far to go back for this thorax, and you can see where the body changes and starts to gain some bulk up here, and that's perfect. So for the actual soft hackle, I've got some Grizzly soft hackle, and this is red Grizzly, and I've trimmed out the tip there. And then what I've got left are fibers that if I hold these up against the bead, the fibers will stick out just past the end of the body. And that's exactly the measurement I'm looking for here. And for you guys at home, that's the measurement you want to look for on your feathers as well. So that when you wrap this, it's not all going to flow directly back, right? These are dry feathers, so they're going to stick up and out a little. And so pre-measuring before you tie in the feather makes a big difference. So let's get that all tied in nice. And I've tied this in so that the concave side or bottom side is facing upwards, so that as we begin to wrap, that will face toward the back and leave us these nice looking feathers facing outward. Trim the butts out of that little section we trimmed earlier, like so. And they're not really wanting to cooperate, so take your time, be tedious of it. Make sure you get as many of them trimmed out of there as you can. And we will be adding a little bit of dub here for the thorax, so if it's not 100%, please by all means do not freak out. Alright, so speaking of some dubbing, I've got some Spawn Simi Seal in UV bleeding black, and if you're a fan of black and red flies, like this is for you. I mean, there are days that I've been on the water and nothing seems to work, and then for whatever reason put on a black and red fly and get the net ready, because there are days when it is absolutely on fire. Alright, so not a lot of bulk here. What we're just doing is giving this a little bit of a stage or a prop setup, so that when we wrap this feather, it doesn't all just follow back along. And nothing fancy here, folks. Just definitely utilitarian type fly, and it gets the job done. Alright, so now I've dubbed back and forward, and I'm just going to put that thread in front of our feather now, and for ease of wrapping, I'm just going to turn her over, and let's get one wrap started here. The whole while be mindful of where those fibers are going, and just kind of coax them toward the back before you make the next portion of that wrap. And so we're not going to need much more than that, so let's call that just about 2 wraps of this feather. And then when I create this clean V here as a tie off, I'll continue wrapping it now and just make sure I can see that V, and when I can, I'm going to slick my thread in there and try not to trap any of those fibers that we worked so hard to pop out there. There we go. One more wrap in between that, and then I can pull that feather back with all the other fibers and get my thread in front of it and behind the bead. At this point, it's safe to trim out the rest of this feather here, like so, and we got one missed fiber, which if we slide that like so, there we go, nothing to it. Let me spring the rest of these fibers out, make sure they're all flowing around the hook, and if they are, well, just continue solidifying that thread, and we've got a nice little collar there. I'm just going to go ahead and whip finish at this point. So let's get 1, 2, 3, and 4 wraps in there for the first one, and then I'll do it again, and we can cement this guy. Flies don't have to be crazy tricky to be effective. Do you need the hot wire style? Absolutely not. Is it fun? Oh yeah. Will your fishing buddies be impressed? Maybe. Will the fish? That's what's important. And I can tell you from experience, the fish are usually pretty happy you went to the extra effort of tying a hot wire fly for them. They might not say it, but they'll show it. So for the cement here, Loon hard head clear, and just make sure you get a nice coat of cement on all those thread wraps. Try to keep as much of it out of the feather as you can, like so. And once you've got an even coating there, well, that's it. You're ready to go fishing. So there you have it. Hot wire, bodied style, soft hackle in black and red. So if you guys enjoy this, by all means, please hit like and subscribe, and we will see you guys on the water.